Hello and welcome back to Mr. English Lab. My name is Laura, and I'm here to guide you on your journey to clear, confident, and natural English. If you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a lesson. Your support truly helps this channel grow. Alright, take a deep breath, relax, and let's begin today's session. In this story, I want you to imagine something very simple. Something so quiet that it almost feels like a whisper inside your mind. And this whisper begins on a soft morning when the sunlight is gentle and the world feels calm. Because this is the moment when the journey of self-discovery begins, not with a loud sound, not with a big decision, but with a small feeling inside the heart that says, maybe there is more to my life than the life I am living right now. And as you listen to this voice, your guide from Mr. English Lab, will speak slowly and clearly, helping you understand each word, each emotion, each step. Because learning English is not only about learning grammar or sentences, it is also about learning how to express your heart, your thoughts, and your true story. And today we start with a young person named Daniel, someone who feels like many of us feel, someone who looks confident on the outside, but sometimes feels lost on the inside. And Daniel wakes up one morning not knowing that this day will change his life, because when he opens his eyes, he feels something unusual, something like a soft pressure in his chest, not pain, but a quiet question. Maybe a question he has ignored for many years, and he sits up slowly, feeling the warm light on the walls, listening to the sound of the birds outside, and he thinks, why do I feel like something is missing in my life? And this question is the beginning of everything, because every journey of self-discovery starts with a question that grows quietly inside, and Daniel tries to ignore it at first, because he has work to do, people to meet, responsibilities to take care of, but the question follows him as he gets dressed, follows him when he walks into the kitchen, follows him when he pours water into a glass, and as he stands there, holding the glass with both hands, he feels the stillness of the moment, and he decides, without even understanding why, to sit down and think about his life. For the first time in many years, and maybe you have also had a moment like this, a morning when something inside you felt uncertain, or confused, or curious, and even if you didn't know what you were searching for, you knew that something needed to change. And Daniel sits at his small table and looks at the wall in front of him, a wall he has seen thousands of times, but today it feels different, almost like a mirror, like it is waiting for him to speak. And he thinks about his life, his days, his routine, and he begins to feel a little uncomfortable because he realizes that he has been living the same day again and again without asking himself what he truly wants. And this realization is both scary and powerful, because when you finally see your life clearly, you can no longer pretend that everything is fine, and Daniel feels a slow wave of emotion move through him. Something like sadness mixed with hope, a feeling that says, you can change, but first you must look inside. And this is the challenge, not a challenge from the outside world, but a challenge from within, the challenge of being honest with yourself. And maybe you also know this feeling, the feeling of asking questions you don't want to ask because you are afraid of the answers. And Daniel starts to explore his emotions carefully, like someone walking through a dark room with a small candle, because every emotion is like a shape in the dark, something that becomes clear only when you get close to it. And he remembers moments from his past, times when he felt excited, alive, free, times when life felt big and full of possibilities, and he wonders when those feelings disappeared. And as he sits there, he thinks about how he has been moving through life like someone walking quickly through a busy street, not seeing the details, not hearing the sounds, not feeling the air, and he realizes that he has been rushing without direction. And so he closes his eyes and breathes slowly, trying to understand himself more deeply. And in that quiet breath, he discovers something important, something that feels like a soft truth rising from deep inside his heart. And that truth is that he has been living for others instead of living for himself, trying to please people, trying to meet expectations, trying to be good or successful, but forgetting his own voice, his own dreams, his own identity. And this realization hits him strongly, but also gently, like a wave reaching the shore, and he feels emotional because finally he sees why he felt empty all this time, and suddenly he feels that this morning is not ordinary, that this moment is not random, that this question inside him is a door, and if he has the courage to open this door, he will step into a new part of his life, a part where he listens to himself, understands himself, and grows. And as he sits quietly, he thinks about the people around him, his friends, his family, his colleagues, and he understands that all of them see only the outer part of him, the version he shows to the world, but inside there is a deeper version, a version that wants to speak, that wants to live, and this thought gives him a feeling of both fear and excitement. And so he decides to do something he has not done in a long time. He decides to write, but not a big story, not a perfect sentence, just a simple question at the top of a blank page, a question that says, "Who am I?" And when he writes it, his hand shakes a little because the question feels bigger than the page, bigger than the room, bigger than his life, and he looks at the words and feels a strange kind of energy, as if the question itself is alive, and slowly he begins to write answers, not perfect answers, not smart answers, just honest ones, and he writes about the things he likes, the things he fears, the dreams he once had, the moments that changed him, and as he writes, he feels something opening inside him, something soft and warm, like a flower unfolding. And for the first time in years, he feels connected to himself, truly connected, and this is the moment of transformation, the moment when you discover that your inner world is bigger than your outer world, and when Daniel realizes this, he feels lighter, he feels clearer, he feels like he has taken the first step into a new life, and as sunlight moves slowly across the table, he sits back, breathes deeply, and smiles, not a big smile, but a small one, a smile that says, "I am finally beginning to understand myself," and he knows this journey will not be easy. He knows there will be days of confusion, days of doubt, days when he wants to give up, but he also knows that he has started something important, something that will guide him, shape him, and help him grow. And as the morning continues and the world outside becomes a little louder, he closes his notebook gently and whispers to himself, "This is only the beginning," and now he stands up, feeling his feet on the floor with new awareness, noticing the simple details of life, the softness of the air, the warmth of the sun, the rhythm of his breath, and he feels grateful for this moment, grateful for this question, grateful for this journey. And as he walks to the window and looks outside, he feels a quiet courage inside him, a courage that tells him, "You are ready, and I, as your guide, want you to feel that courage too, because learning English is also a journey of self-discovery, a journey where you understand yourself more deeply with every word you hear, every sentence you speak, and every story you live through." And so as you listen to this story, I want you to reflect on your own life, your own questions, your own quiet feelings. And I want you to ask yourself gently, what am I searching for? Because this question is the true beginning of your journey, and the takeaway from this first chapter is simple but powerful. The first step in self-discovery is not a big action, not a dramatic change, but a quiet moment when you listen to yourself honestly, lovingly, and bravely. And if you can do that, even for a few minutes each day, you will slowly begin to understand your emotions, your dreams, your fears, your strengths, and your true identity. And like Daniel, you will begin to take your first steps into a new life, a life that feels more real, more meaningful, and more connected to who you truly are. The next morning arrives softly, almost like the sky is trying not to wake the world too quickly, and Daniel feels something different the moment he opens his eyes, a kind of gentle awareness that stays close to him like a warm blanket. And as he lies in bed for a few seconds, listening to the faint sounds of the street outside, he realizes that his mind is quieter than usual, calmer, as if the simple question he wrote in his notebook, "Who am I?" has already begun to change him from the inside, and this quiet calm becomes the hook that pulls him into the new day, because he senses that there is something waiting for him, something he hasn't explored in a long time. And while the world around him follows its ordinary rhythm, inside him a new rhythm is forming, soft and slow, like the beginning of a song he once knew but forgot. And as he sits up, stretching his arms and feeling the cool air on his skin, he remembers the feeling from yesterday, the feeling of being honest with himself. And even though he feels a little nervous about what this journey might bring, he also feels curious, and curiosity is a powerful guide, a guide that leads you deeper into the world inside your heart. And so Daniel begins his day with a sense of intention, telling himself silently, "Today, I will explore myself a little more." And as he stands in front of the mirror brushing his teeth, he sees his own reflection in a new way, not just his face, but the emotions behind his eyes, the tiredness, the hope, the confusion, the desire for change. And he realizes that for many years he looked at his reflection only to check his appearance, not to check his feelings. And this simple awareness becomes the context of his morning, shaping his thoughts as he prepares for the day. Daniel walks to a small park near his apartment, a park he has visited many times before but never with this new sense of attention. And as he steps onto the path, he hears the soft crunch of gravel under his shoes, and he notices the smell of the grass still wet with morning dew, and the gentle sway of the leaves when the wind touches them, and all these tiny details feel louder, clearer, almost like the world is trying to speak to him in a language he never took time to understand. And as he walks slowly, he feels something opening inside him, like a window that has been closed for too long, and he lets the fresh air of awareness enter his mind. But this is also where the challenge begins, because when you start to connect with yourself, you also begin to notice uncomfortable things you once ignored. And as Daniel walks, he suddenly remembers the many times he hid his emotions from others, the many days when he pretended to be fine even though he felt tired, sad, or confused. And he feels a small heaviness in his chest, because now that he is paying attention, he can no longer escape from those memories. And he realizes that self-discovery is not just about learning new things about yourself, but also facing the truths you have avoided. And this realization makes him slow down his steps, because facing your emotions is like walking into a forest you have never explored before. You don't know what you will find, but you must keep going if you want to understand the path. As he continues walking, he sits on a wooden bench under a tall tree, and the quietness of the early morning surrounds him like a gentle hug, giving him space to explore his thoughts. And he closes his eyes to listen to the soft sounds around him. The distant laughter of a child, the low hum of traffic far away, the whistle of a bird that seems to be calling someone, and these sounds become part of his exploration, reminding him that the world is full of voices, full of life, full of stories. And he wonders why he never paid attention before, why he always felt too busy, too distracted, too caught up in tasks and responsibilities. And as he breathes slowly, he feels his mind drifting into deeper layers of memory, remembering times when he used to dream freely, times when he believed anything was possible, before he started comparing himself to others, before he started measuring his worth through someone else's expectations, and he feels a soft sadness rise inside him, not a sharp pain, but a gentle ache, the kind that comes when you understand something important about your life. And Daniel sits with this feeling instead of running away from it, and he lets the sadness speak, because sadness often carries truth inside it. And the truth becomes clear. He has not been listening to his own needs for a very long time. This is where the realization arrives, slowly, like sunrise spreading across a mountain, and Daniel understands that self-discovery is not about finding something new, but remembering something old, something you once knew but forgot, something that has always lived inside you but got buried under routines, fears, and expectations, and he realizes that his true voice has been whispering to him for years. Whispering softly during quiet moments, but he always ignored it, always pushed it away because he thought he didn't have time, or because he didn't want to feel things that were uncomfortable. And now that he finally hears this inner voice clearly, he feels both sadness and relief. Sadness for the years he spent disconnected from himself, and relief because now he knows the truth, and once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it, and once you hear your inner voice, you cannot silence it again. And he feels a strong desire to continue this journey, because even though it feels emotional and sometimes difficult, it also feels honest, and honesty brings strength. As he sits on the bench, he feels something shift inside him, something like a small light turning on, and that light is the beginning of transformation, because transformation does not start with big actions or dramatic decisions. It starts with awareness, with clarity, with the decision to understand yourself, and Daniel feels lighter, not because all his problems are gone, but because his relationship with himself is changing, and he feels like he is slowly stepping into the quiet world inside his heart, a world he forgot existed, and this inner world feels peaceful, warm, and real, and for the first time in years he feels safe with himself, and he knows that safety comes from acceptance, and acceptance comes from listening without judgment. And he tells himself gently, it's okay to feel everything. It's okay to be human, and these simple words feel powerful, almost like a key unlocking a part of him that was locked for a long time. Daniel stands up from the bench and begins to walk again, but now his steps feel different, softer, more grounded, and he feels connected to the earth beneath him, to the air around him, to the space inside him, and as he walks past a small pond in the park, he sees his reflection in the water, and this time he does not just see his face. He sees his emotions, his story, his journey, and he feels proud, not proud of achievements or success, but proud of the courage to explore himself. And as he keeps walking, he begins to reflect deeply on what this journey means to him, thinking about how understanding himself will help him make better decisions, create stronger relationships, and live a more authentic life. And he realizes that the more he understands his emotions, the easier it becomes to express them, and the easier it becomes to connect with others in a real way. And this reflection softens his heart even more, and he feels grateful for this simple morning, for this simple walk, for this simple awareness. By the time he leaves the park, the sun is higher in the sky, and the world feels brighter, and Daniel feels ready to continue his day with a new sense of clarity. And as he walks home, he thinks about you, the listener, the learner, because he wants to share something he wishes he had learned long ago, and I, as your guide from Mr. English Lab, want to share it with you too, because the takeaway from this second chapter is gentle but powerful. To grow, you must slow down. To understand yourself, you must listen to yourself, and to listen to yourself, you must create quiet moments in your day, moments without noise, without pressure, without distraction, moments where you breathe, feel, and ask simple questions. Questions like, how do I feel? And what do I need today? And when you ask these questions honestly, you begin to see your inner world more clearly. And when you see clearly, you grow naturally, gently, and beautifully, just like Daniel is growing now, one quiet step a day. Time. The day after his walk in the park, Daniel wakes with a feeling he has not felt in a very long time, a feeling that is soft and warm, almost like a quiet invitation from life, calling him to continue the journey he has just begun. And as he lies in bed staring at the ceiling, he realizes something important. For years he lived with noise inside his mind, noise made from stress, expectations, fears, responsibilities, old memories, and anxious thoughts. And because of that noise, he could never hear the small, gentle voice inside him, the voice that speaks only in the quiet moments, the voice that carries truth, direction, and wisdom. And this realization becomes the hook that pulls him into the new day. Because now he knows that if he wants to understand himself more deeply, he must learn to listen to that inner voice, the one that always tells the truth even when the truth is uncomfortable. And as he slowly sits up, rubbing his eyes and letting the morning light touch his face, he feels a strange mixture of calm and curiosity, and he whispers softly to himself, "What will I learn today?" creating a simple intention that will guide him through the next hours of his journey. Because intentions are like small lanterns that help you walk through the darkness inside you, lighting the path just enough so you can take the next step without fear. Daniel walks to his kitchen and prepares a warm cup of tea, not rushing, not multitasking, but doing it slowly, mindfully, almost like a quiet meditation. And as the steam rises gently from the cup, he feels present, grounded, connected to the moment, and this becomes the context for the inner exploration that is about to unfold, because self-discovery does not always happen in big moments. It often happens in simple moments, when your mind is calm and your heart is open. And as he sits at his small table, holding the warm cup between his hands, he begins to think about the noise inside him, the constant chatter of thoughts that never seem to rest, and he realizes how much these thoughts have controlled him, shaped his decisions, influenced his feelings, and limited his freedom. And he decides that today he will try to understand where this noise comes from, because understanding the noise is the first step toward hearing the voice beneath it. But of course, when you try to listen to your inner voice, the first thing you meet is the challenge. The noise becomes louder, not quieter, and this happens to Daniel too, because as he closes his eyes and tries to focus on his breathing, old thoughts immediately jump into his mind, like children trying to get his attention. Thoughts saying, "You should be doing something more productive," or "Why are you wasting time?" or "What if you fail?" And Daniel feels frustration rise inside him. Because he wants to connect with himself, he wants to find clarity, but the noise in his mind keeps interrupting him, and this is a challenge many people face when they begin the journey of self-awareness, because the mind is used to being loud. And when you finally try to quiet it, it becomes even louder for a while, and Daniel tries not to fight these thoughts, because fighting them only makes them stronger, and instead he tries to observe them gently, almost like watching clouds move across the sky, letting them pass without giving them too much attention, and slowly, very slowly, the noise begins to soften, and a small space opens inside him, a quiet space where he can begin to see his true emotions. Once the noise becomes softer, Daniel begins the exploration part of his journey, and he asks himself a simple but powerful question: what am I feeling right now? And the moment he asks this question, he feels something surprising. A wave of emotion rising from deep inside him, a mix of worry, sadness, hope, and tenderness. emotions he did not even know were there, and he realizes how disconnected he has been from his own feelings, how often he ignored them, pushed them away, or hid them. Because he was afraid that feeling too deeply would make him weak, and as this wave moves through him, Daniel lets himself feel everything without judgment, allowing the emotions to speak, and as he listens, he discovers something important. His emotions are not enemies, they are messages, signals, guides that show him what he needs, what he fears, and what he dreams of, and this understanding softens his heart, helping him connect with himself in a more gentle way. As Daniel continues to explore, memories rise inside him, not memories of big events, but small ones, simple moments when he felt hurt or misunderstood or unsure of himself, moments he never gave space to because he thought they were unimportant. But now he sees that these small moments shaped him more than he realized, and as he listens to these memories, he begins to understand the deeper truth behind his noise, and this is where the realization arrives, not suddenly, not dramatically, but slowly, like a quiet light spreading across his mind, and he realizes that the noise inside him is not the real him, it is only the voice of fear, fear of being judged, fear of failing, fear of disappointing others, fear of not being good enough. And he sees that this fear has been speaking louder than his true voice for many years, and this understanding brings a soft sadness, but also a deep relief, because now he knows that the noise is not truth, it is only fear pretending to be truth, and once you see fear clearly, you take away its power. With this realization, transformation begins inside Daniel like a seed breaking open under the soil, small and quiet, but full of life, and he feels something shift inside him, a new strength, a new gentleness, a new clarity. And he realizes that listening to his inner voice is not about silence, but about choosing which voice to trust, the voice of fear or the voice of truth, and he chooses truth, even if it speaks softly, even if it speaks slowly, even if it asks him to be brave in ways he is not used to, and this choice changes the way he breathes, the way he feels, the way he sees himself, and for the first time in a long time he feels connected to something deep inside him, something real, something peaceful. Daniel reflects on everything he has learned today as he walks to his living room and stands by the window, watching the sunlight spread across the street, and he realizes that the most important part of this journey is not finding answers, but learning how to listen, learning how to create quiet moments where his inner voice can speak, learning how to stay present with himself even when his emotions feel heavy, and as he watches people walking below, carrying their own stories, their own dreams, their own fears, he feels a sense of compassion for them and for himself, understanding that everyone is fighting their own battles, everyone is trying to understand themselves, everyone is searching for peace, and this realization softens him even more, reminding him that self-discovery is not a race, not a competition, but a gentle, patient journey. And finally, as Daniel closes the window and takes a deep breath, he feels ready to end this chapter of his day with a simple but powerful takeaway, one that I, as your guide from Mr. English Lab, want to share with you too. Listening to your inner voice is the most important skill in the journey of self-discovery, and to hear that voice you must learn to quiet the noise around you and the noise inside you, and you can do this by slowing down, breathing deeply, creating small moments of silence, and asking simple questions like, what do I feel, and what do I need? And when you listen with kindness, with patience, with honesty, you begin to hear the truth beneath the fear, the clarity beneath the confusion, and the strength beneath the doubt. And this truth will guide you, shape you, and help you grow into the person you are meant to become, one quiet moment at a time. The following morning begins in a quiet, soft way, almost as if the world itself is giving Daniel permission to take another gentle step inward, and when he opens his eyes, he feels a familiar calmness surrounding him like warm air, and he lies still for a moment, listening to the peaceful silence of his room, and this silence becomes the first whisper of the day, the hook that invites him to go deeper into himself, deeper into the parts of his heart he has avoided for many years. And as he stretches his arms above his head, he senses a new readiness inside him, a readiness to face something important, something he has always pushed away, the emotions he doesn't like to feel, the emotions he has always avoided, and he knows this day will be different. Not because something big will happen, but because something true will happen, something honest, and honesty is the beginning of real growth, and as he sits up slowly, he feels that today is the day he must face the emotions that scare him, the ones that make him feel small, the ones he hides even from himself, and this intention becomes the start of his journey for the day. Daniel walks to the window and opens it, letting the fresh morning air touch his face, and he notices how the breeze feels gentle but alive, and he stands there breathing in deeply, feeling the air fill his lungs and leave slowly. And in this simple breathing he feels present, grounded, connected to himself, and this becomes the context for what will unfold next, because being present is necessary when you want to face your emotions, and he tells himself softly, "Whatever I feel today, I will let myself feel it," and even though the words are simple, they feel powerful, almost like a promise to himself, and with this promise he walks to the kitchen, prepares a warm cup of tea, and sits at the same small table where his journey began. And as he holds the cup with both hands, feeling its warmth, he decides that today he will ask a harder question, a question that takes courage, and he whispers quietly, "What emotion have I been afraid to feel?" And as soon as the words leave his mouth, he feels a small tension rise in his chest, and he realizes that this question is the challenge of today, because facing the emotions you avoid is never easy. For a long moment he sits in silence, waiting, breathing, listening to his heart, and then slowly, like a soft wave rising from deep water, he feels the emotion appear, and the emotion is sadness, not the loud kind of sadness that comes from sudden pain, but the quiet sadness that grows when you ignore your own needs, when you stay strong for too long, when you live for others but forget yourself. And Daniel feels this sadness moving inside him, heavy but gentle, and he wants to turn away from it because it feels uncomfortable, but he remembers his promise, and so he allows himself to feel it, and this is the beginning of his exploration, because to understand yourself, you must explore the emotions you usually avoid, not to suffer, but to finally release what has been trapped inside you for years. And he sits with the sadness, letting it speak, letting it breathe, letting it rise without pushing it down, and suddenly memories begin to appear, memories of moments when he felt alone, moments when he felt misunderstood, moments when he needed help but didn't ask because he didn't want to be a burden, and each memory brings another small piece of sadness with it, and Daniel feels tears gathering in his eyes, soft and slow. But he does not stop them, because crying is not weakness, crying is truth leaving the body, and as the tears flow down his cheeks, he feels something surprising, not heaviness, but relief, like a pressure inside him is slowly releasing. The more he lets himself feel, the more he understands, and this understanding brings him closer to a deeper realization, a realization that rises gently like light through a window, and the realization is this: sadness is not here to break him. Sadness is here to guide him, to show him what he needs, to show him what he has been ignoring, and as this truth becomes clear, he begins to understand why he avoided sadness for so long, because many people, including him, believe that sadness is something bad, something shameful, something to hide, something that makes life harder. But now he realizes that sadness is simply a message, a soft voice saying, "Take care of yourself," and this understanding changes something inside him, something deep. And he feels a small but powerful shift in his heart. As this realization sinks in, transformation begins in Daniel quietly, like a seed opening in the dark soil of his heart, and he feels himself becoming stronger, not because the sadness is gone, but because he is no longer afraid of it. And he understands now that real strength is not pretending to be okay. Real strength is facing your emotions honestly, even when they feel heavy, even when they feel uncomfortable, even when they make you cry. And as he wipes his face with the sleeve of his shirt, he feels lighter, calmer, clearer, and he knows that something inside him has changed forever. And he stands up from the table slowly, walking to the mirror on the wall, and when he looks at his reflection, he sees the same face, but a different person. Someone who has the courage to feel, the courage to listen, the courage to be honest, and he feels a quiet pride growing inside him. Daniel stands there for a long moment, reflecting on everything he has experienced that morning, and he understands that every emotion, even the uncomfortable ones, has a purpose, and he thinks about how many years he spent running away from sadness, hiding it behind smiles, pushing it down with distractions, pretending everything was fine, and he realizes that avoiding emotions does not make them disappear, it only makes them heavier, and he feels grateful for this new clarity, and he whispers to himself softly, "I will listen to all of my emotions from now on," and as he says this, he feels his heart open even more, like a door that was locked for years has finally been unlocked. He walks to the window again and watches the world outside, the children running to school, the old woman walking her dog, the man sweeping his porch, the soft sunlight touching the leaves, and he feels connected to everything. Because now that he understands himself better, he can feel the world more fully too, and this connection brings a deep sense of peace, a peace he has not felt in a long time, and he realizes that this peace comes from acceptance, and acceptance comes from honesty. And honesty comes from allowing yourself to feel what you feel, not what you think you should feel, and this awareness fills him with warmth. Before he ends this moment of reflection, Daniel thinks about you, the listener, the learner, walking your own path of learning and self-discovery, and he wishes he could hold your hand and tell you gently that it's okay to feel everything you feel, and I, as your guide from Mr. English Lab, want to share the same message with you, because the takeaway of this chapter is powerful and simple. Do not run away from your emotions, because the emotions you avoid are the ones that need your attention the most, and when you face them with kindness, they lose their power to hurt you and gain the power to heal you. And if you want to grow, if you want to understand yourself, if you want to become more confident, more peaceful, more whole, you must let yourself feel honestly, without shame, without fear, without judgment, and when you do, you will discover that every emotion, even sadness, even fear, even confusion, is a teacher, a guide, a friend helping you return to yourself. And this is how the journey of self-discovery continues, one brave emotion at a time. The morning after facing his sadness, Daniel wakes up with a softer heart and a quieter mind, and he lies in bed for a few minutes simply listening to his breath, feeling the peaceful rhythm of his chest rising and falling, and in that calmness, he senses something new, something gentle but important, like the beginning of a thought that has been waiting for years to be heard, and this becomes the hook that pulls him into the day. Because he realizes that now that he has faced some of his deeper emotions, he is finally ready to explore something even more powerful, the stories he tells himself about who he is, stories that shape his feelings, his confidence, his choices, and even the way he sees the world. And as he sits up, stretching his legs under the blanket, he whispers to himself in a quiet voice, "What stories have I been believing?" And this simple question fills the room with a sense of possibility, because he knows that if he can understand the stories inside him, he can transform them, and if he can transform them, he can transform his entire life. Daniel gets out of bed and walks slowly to the living room where the morning light shines softly through the curtains, creating gentle patterns on the floor, and he sits down on the couch with his notebook, the same notebook where he wrote, "Who am I?" on the first day of his journey, and he opens it carefully, feeling its weight in his hands, and this becomes the context for the deep inner work he is about to do, because writing helps him see what has been hidden inside him, helps him understand thoughts he never slowed down enough to notice, and as he holds his pen above the page, he asks himself again, "What stories have I been telling myself?" And as soon as he asks the question, he feels something inside him tighten slightly. A small tension that tells him this is important, this is real, this is the next step in understanding himself. But as soon as he tries to write, he feels the challenge rise inside him like a wall, because the stories we tell ourselves are often invisible, so familiar that we don't even notice them. And he realizes that discovering these stories will not be as simple as writing down a thought or two, and he begins to feel a bit lost, unsure where to begin, unsure how to find the truth within him, and this uncertainty makes him close his notebook for a moment, placing his hand on top of it as if to calm it, and he takes a deep breath, reminding himself that confusion is part of the journey, that not knowing where to start is a sign he is going deeper than before, and he whispers softly, "It's okay to not know." Because being gentle with yourself creates space for clarity. He closes his eyes and begins the exploration phase in silence, listening to the soft sounds around him, the ticking of a distant clock, the faint hum of a refrigerator, the peaceful stillness of the room, and he lets his mind relax, not forcing answers, not rushing, but allowing his thoughts to rise naturally, and slowly he begins to notice patterns, small thoughts he has repeated to himself for years without questioning them. Thoughts like, "I'm not good enough. People will judge me. I must not fail. Everyone else is stronger than me." And as he listens to these thoughts, he realizes they are not random. They are old stories he created from past experiences, stories that once protected him from pain but now hold him back. And he feels a mixture of surprise and sadness, because he never realized how many of these stories he carried inside him, stories that shaped his confidence, his decisions, and even his dreams. This leads him to a powerful realization, one that grows slowly inside him like a light expanding through a dark room, and the realization is this: the stories we tell ourselves are not always true, and yet we believe them as if they are facts. And these stories become the lens through which we see the world, and Daniel understands now that he has been living with a lens covered in old fears, old memories, old wounds, and because of that lens, he could not see himself clearly, and he feels a deep sadness for the years he spent believing he was not enough, the years he spent hiding his true self, the years he spent shrinking his dreams to avoid disappointment. But he also feels relief, because now that he sees the stories, he has the power to rewrite them. This realization brings transformation, not loud or dramatic, but soft and steady, like a river carving a new path through the land, slowly changing its direction, and Daniel picks up notebook again, feeling a sense of courage and clarity, and he begins to write down each story he discovered, one by one, writing them honestly, writing them without fear, and after each story, he writes a new sentence, a sentence that is true, a sentence filled with compassion, a sentence that begins to rewrite his inner world, and for every story like, "I'm not good enough," he writes, "I am learning, growing, and becoming more myself every day," and for every story like, "People will judge me," he writes, "Some people will understand, some won't, and that's okay," and for every story like, "I must not fail," he writes, "Failing is part of learning, and I do not need to be perfect to be worthy," and with each rewritten story, he feels lighter, as if pieces of his heart are being lifted from old shadows into warm light. Daniel sits quietly after writing, feeling the soft opening in his chest, the gentle warmth in his body, and he reflects on everything he has learned in this moment, understanding that the stories we believe shape the way we feel, and the way we feel shapes the way we live, and he realizes that if he wants to live with more confidence, more peace, and more truth, he must continue to rewrite the stories that no longer serve him, because self-discovery is not just about understanding your emotions, it is also about questioning your beliefs, questioning your thoughts, questioning the old narratives that limit your potential, and this awareness fills him with a sense of strength, because now he knows that change is possible, not through force, but through understanding. He walks to the window and looks outside at the world, at the people walking by, each carrying their own stories, their own fears, their own dreams, and he feels connected to them in a new way, because he realizes that everyone is shaped by the stories they tell themselves. And he wonders how many people live their whole lives believing they are not enough, believing their dreams are too big, believing their emotions are too heavy, and he feels a deep compassion for them and for himself. Because we are all learning, we are all growing, we are all trying to understand who we are beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the old stories. And before he ends his reflection, Daniel thinks about you, the learner, the listener, sitting wherever you are, listening to this story, learning English while also learning about yourself, and he hopes you understand something important, something as your guide from Mr. English Lab, want to share with you gently and clearly. The takeaway from this chapter is simple but life-changing. Your thoughts are not always the truth, your fears are not always real, and the stories you tell yourself can be rewritten, and when you rewrite them with honesty and compassion, you change the way you see yourself, and when you change the way you see yourself, you change your life, because self-discovery is not only about looking inward. It is about choosing which voice inside you to believe, the voice of fear or the voice of truth, and if you practice listening to your truth, even in small moments, you will slowly begin to live with more clarity, more courage, and more confidence, exactly like Daniel is beginning to live now, one story at a time. The next morning arrives with a softness that feels almost intentional, as if the universe is giving Daniel a gentle reminder that he is exactly where he needs to be, and when he opens his eyes, he lies quietly for a moment, letting the morning light wash over him like a peaceful wave, and in that calm stillness, he feels something he hasn't felt in a long time, a small sense of trust beginning to form inside him, trust in his emotions, trust in his thoughts, trust in his voice, trust in the journey he has started, and this small spark of trust becomes the hook pulling him into this new day, because he realizes that understanding yourself is only the first step, but trusting yourself is the step that truly changes your life. And as he sits up slowly, running his hand through his hair and breathing deeply, he whispers to himself, "Today, I want to learn how to trust myself again," and as soon as he says it, he feels a warmth in his chest, like his heart is saying, "Yes, this is the work you are ready for." Daniel moves to the kitchen, preparing a warm drink just as he has each morning during his journey, and as he waits for the water to boil, he looks around his small apartment and notices something new. The space feels different, not because the room has changed, but because he has changed, And this awareness becomes the context for what he is about to explore today, because the world often looks different when you begin to trust yourself more, and when the water finishes boiling, he pours it slowly into a cup, watching the steam rise gently like a soft dance in the air, and he sits down at the table holding his warm cup with both hands, feeling the present moment wrap around him like a calm blanket. And he thinks about how long it has been since he truly trusted himself, trusted his choices, trusted his feelings, trusted his inner voice, and he realizes that somewhere along the way, perhaps many years ago, he stopped believing that his heart could guide him, and he wonders when that trust was lost. But as soon as he begins to think more deeply, he feels the challenge rise inside him, a challenge that feels like a heavy shadow stretching across his thoughts, because trusting yourself is not easy when you have lived for years listening to doubt, listening to fear, listening to the voices of others instead of your own. And Daniel feels the familiar weight of old memories rising, moments when he made a decision and it didn't go well, moments when he trusted someone and got hurt, moments when he ignored advice and felt regret, and these memories remind him of the times he failed, the times he felt embarrassed, the times he wished he had chosen differently, and for a moment he feels the desire to turn away from this challenge, to distract himself with something easier, something more comfortable, but he remembers his intention and takes a slow, deep breath, telling himself softly, "It's okay to feel unsure. Just don't run away." As he breathes slowly, Daniel begins the exploration, not by forcing himself to feel confident, but by gently asking himself questions that open the door to deeper understanding, questions like, "Why did I stop trusting myself?" and "Whose voice have I been listening to all these years?" And when he asks these questions, he suddenly hears something inside him, an inner whisper, a quiet memory of being young and full of dreams, a time when he believed anything was possible, a time when he trusted his creativity, his curiosity, his instincts, and he realizes that trust is something we have naturally as children but slowly lose as we grow older, replaced by worry, pressure, comparison, and fear, and he feels sadness rising as he remembers all the times he doubted himself because someone else said he wasn't good enough, or because society told him he had to be perfect to succeed, or because he chose safety instead of truth, and this sadness sits gently inside him, not to hurt him, but to show him the reality of how trust was lost. As this understanding grows, Daniel asks himself another question: what if I could rebuild that trust? And the moment he asks it, he feels something shift inside him, something open, something soften, and this leads him toward a powerful realization. A realization that feels like a soft beam of sunlight breaking through the clouds of his mind. And the realization is this: trusting yourself doesn't mean you will always be right. Trusting yourself doesn't mean you will never make mistakes. Trusting yourself doesn't mean everything will be perfect. Trusting yourself simply means believing that you are capable of learning, capable of healing, capable of choosing, capable of growing, and capable of recovering even when things go wrong. And this truth fills him with warmth, because he suddenly understands that trust is not built on perfection. It is built on courage, on honesty, on compassion for yourself, and this realization begins to change the way he sees himself. With this realization glowing softly inside him, transformation begins to move through him, not loudly, not quickly, but gently, like a small river warming under the spring sun, and he begins to feel something he hasn't felt in a long time. A quiet confidence, the kind of confidence that does not come from achievements or success or praise, but from knowing that he is learning to trust himself again, step by step, moment by moment, and as he breathes in this new feeling, he feels lighter, like he has released something heavy without even noticing when it happened, and he stands up from the table and walks slowly to the window, And when he looks outside, the world seems brighter, not because the sun changed, but because his heart changed. And he feels a gentle excitement inside him, a quiet joy, almost like meeting an old friend he forgot he missed. Daniel stands there for a long moment, reflecting on everything he has discovered that morning, and he realizes that trust grows in small ways, by listening to his feelings instead of ignoring them, by making small choices that feel right instead of choices that please others, by taking time to understand himself instead of rushing through life, and he feels proud, not proud in a loud or arrogant way, but in a soft way, like a flower opening. Proud of the way he is slowly becoming more himself. Proud of the courage he has shown in facing his emotions, proud of the steps he is taking towards self-love, and as he watches the people outside walking to work, carrying their own fears and their own hopes, he feels connected to them. Understanding that everyone is learning to trust themselves in their own quiet way. And before he ends this moment of reflection, Daniel thinks of you, the person listening, learning English, learning about life, learning about your own heart, and he wishes he could sit beside you and tell you the truth he has learned today, a truth I, as your guide from Mr. English Lab, want to share with you clearly and gently. The takeaway from this chapter is simple, but deeply powerful. Trust is something you build with yourself, not something that appears suddenly, and you build it by showing up for yourself every day, by listening to your feelings, by respecting your needs, by choosing honesty over fear, and by believing that you are capable of growing even when things feel difficult. And if you practice trusting yourself little by little, even in the smallest decisions, you will begin to feel stronger, braver, more confident, and more connected to the real you, exactly the way Daniel is beginning to feel now, one gentle breath at a time. The next morning begins with a quiet, bright softness, the kind of light that fills the room slowly as if it is trying not to wake anything too quickly, and Daniel opens his eyes with a sense of peace he is still learning to recognize. A peace that feels gentle but steady, like the calm glow of a candle in a dark room, and as he lies on his back staring at the ceiling, he feels something new inside him, something that wasn't there before, or maybe something that was always there but hidden under years of fear, doubt, and pressure, and that something is hope, a soft, warm hope that whispers, your future doesn't have to look like your past, and this whisper becomes the hook pulling him into this new chapter of his journey. Because he realizes that now that he is learning to trust himself, he can finally begin to look forward, not with anxiety, not with fear, but with curiosity, possibility, and a sense of wonder. And as he sits up slowly, stretching his arms toward the morning sky, he says softly, "What kind of future do I want to walk toward?" And as soon as the words leave his mouth, the room feels brighter, more alive, as if the question itself has opened a small door inside him, a door he has been too afraid to open for years. He gets out of bed and walks to the window, pulling the curtains aside to let the sunlight enter fully, and he feels the warm light touch his face like a gentle hand, and this becomes the context for his morning. Because today he will begin to imagine his future not with fear, but with new eyes, eyes that see possibilities instead of limitations, eyes that see potential instead of doubt, and as he stands there breathing slowly, he feels a quiet excitement inside him, the kind that rises when you begin to believe that change is possible, that growth is real, that life can become something more meaningful, and he whispers again, "I am ready to see what I couldn't see before," and this small statement becomes a promise to himself. He walks to the kitchen, prepares a warm drink, and sits at his familiar small table, the same table that has held so many important moments during his journey, moments of sadness, moments of clarity, moments of realization. And today it will hold something new, the challenge of imagining a future that is different from the past he has lived, because even though imagining a brighter future sounds simple, it is often difficult, especially when you have lived many years feeling unsure of yourself. And as Daniel takes a sip from his cup, he feels the quiet fear rise inside him, fear that says, what if nothing changes? Or what if I choose the wrong path? Or what if I dream too big and fail? And he recognizes this fear immediately, not as truth, but as the old voice inside him trying to protect him from disappointment, and he places a hand on his chest, breathing slowly, letting the fear rise but not control him, and he whispers gently, "It's okay to be scared, but I won't stop." Because of fear. With that gentle acceptance, Daniel begins the exploration, and he asks himself questions that feel both exciting and unfamiliar. Questions like, what kind of life would make me feel proud? And what experiences do I want to have before my life ends? And who do I want to become? And as he asks these questions, he notices something surprising. His mind tries to answer with old patterns, old stories, old limitations, saying things like, you can't do that, you're not ready, that's too big for you. And he realizes that his mind has been trained by years of doubt to think small, to avoid risk, to choose safety over truth, and for a moment he feels frustrated, as if he is trying to break through a wall built long ago, but instead of giving up, he takes another deep breath and whispers, "Let me try again," slowly, and this time he listens not with his mind, but with his heart. And suddenly, small images begin to appear inside him, not clear, not sharp, but gentle and warm, like soft memories of a future that hasn't happened yet, and he sees himself smiling more, speaking with confidence, waking up excited, connecting with people who make him feel alive, doing things that feel meaningful and true, and he realizes that these small images are not random, they are pieces of the life he secretly wants, pieces he never allowed himself to see because he was afraid to hope, afraid to dream, afraid to want. And as these images grow brighter inside him, he feels his chest open, his breathing deepen, and he feels something he hasn't felt since he was a child, pure possibility. This leads him to a powerful realization, one that rises inside him like a sunrise slowly lighting up the sky, and the realization is this: the future is not something that happens to him. The future is something he walks toward, one step at a time. And the steps do not have to be big, dramatic, or perfect. They only need to be honest, aligned with his heart, aligned with his truth, and he understands now that the person he becomes is shaped by the choices he makes each day, and these choices become easier when he trusts himself, when he listens to himself, when he believes that he is worthy of a life that feels meaningful, and this realization fills him with a steady, deep courage. With this new understanding, transformation begins inside him again, soft but powerful, like water shaping the shape of a stone, slow but unstoppable, and he feels a new energy moving through him, a desire to begin taking small steps toward the life he imagines, a desire not to wait for the perfect moment that never arrives, but to begin now, with simple actions that honor his heart, and he stands up from the table, feeling lighter, taller, stronger, and he walks to the mirror, and when he looks at himself, he does not just see his reflection. He sees a person who is learning to walk toward his future with courage, with clarity, with new eyes, and he smiles, a small but real smile, because he feels proud of himself, proud of how far he has come, proud of the small steps he has taken, proud of the person he is becoming. He walks to the door and opens it, stepping outside to feel the morning air, and as he watches the world moving around him, the cars driving by, the children laughing, the people walking to work, he realizes something important. Every person outside is walking toward their own future too, some with confidence, some with fear, some with hope, some with confusion, and he feels a deep connection to all of them, understanding that everyone is trying, everyone is learning, everyone is searching for a life that feels real, meaningful, and true, and this understanding softens him, fills him with compassion, and reminds him that he is never alone on this journey. And before he steps back inside, he thinks of you, the listener, the learner, and he wishes he could look at you and tell you this truth directly. But instead I, as your guide from Mr. English Lab, will say it to you gently, clearly, and slowly. The takeaway of this chapter is simple but life-changing. Your future is not controlled by your past. Your future is shaped by the steps you take today, and if you learn to trust yourself, even a little bit each day, you will begin to see possibilities you could not see before, and if you take small steps toward the life you want, those steps will lead you to a future that feels real and beautiful. And you do not need to know everything right now. You only need to begin with honesty, with courage, and with the quiet belief that you deserve a life that feels true to who you are becoming, exactly the way Daniel is beginning to walk forward now, one gentle, brave step at a time. The next morning arrives gently, not loud or bright, but calm and warm. The kind of morning that feels like a quiet invitation to step deeper into yourself. And when Daniel opens his eyes, he lies still for a few seconds, letting the peaceful silence fill him. Because inside that silence, he begins to feel something new growing inside his chest, something soft but powerful, like a seed finally beginning to open after years of sleeping in the dark. And as he breathes slowly, he realizes that this new feeling is not fear, not doubt, not confusion. It is readiness, a readiness to become the person he is meant to be, the person he has always wanted to be but never believed he could become. And this awareness becomes the hook pulling him into the day, because he knows that this next step of his journey is not just about understanding himself or trusting himself, but about allowing himself to grow into the fullest version of who he truly is. He sits up slowly, rubbing his eyes, feeling the gentle warmth of sunlight touching his skin, and he whispers softly, "I am ready to grow." And as those words leave his lips, Daniel walks to the living room and sits near the window, watching the world outside slowly waking up, people walking, birds singing, the distant hum of life beginning to move, and he feels connected to everything in a new, deeper way. Because he understands now that becoming yourself is not an isolated journey, it is a shared, universal experience, something every human goes through in their own quiet way. And this thought becomes the context for his morning reflection, because he knows that becoming the person you are meant to be is not something that happens quickly. It happens slowly, gently, step by step, choice by choice, and he feels relieved knowing he doesn't need to rush. He simply needs to stay open. As he watches the sunlight dance across the floor, he begins thinking about his life, about the person he used to be, the person he is now, and the person he is becoming, and he realizes that change is already happening inside him. Not dramatic change, but slow emotional change, soft inner change, the kind that grows quietly like roots beneath the soil. But as soon as he begins thinking about the future version of himself, a challenge rises inside him, not loud but strong, like a sudden shadow crossing the room. And the challenge is simple yet deep. What if I'm not ready? Daniel feels worry begin to rise in his chest, worry that whispers old thoughts like, what if you fail? What if you make the wrong choice? What if you can't keep growing? And he feels the old fear trying to pull him back into the familiar, trying to convince him that becoming a better, stronger, more confident version of himself is too big, too hard, too far away. And for a moment he feels himself shrinking again, becoming small, becoming unsure, becoming the old version of himself he thought he had left behind. But he closes his eyes and breathes slowly, letting the fear rise and fall like a wave, and he whispers gently, "It's okay to be afraid, but I won't stop because of fear." And as he says it, the fear softens, loosens its grip on him, and begins to fade back into the quiet corners of his mind. With this small victory, Daniel begins to explore the deeper question of what it truly means to become the person he is meant to be, and he realizes that becoming yourself is not about becoming perfect, not about becoming impressive, not about doing everything right. It is about becoming honest, aligned, aware, peaceful, and brave, and he begins to think about the moments in his life when he felt most alive, most himself, most connected. And he realizes that those moments were often simple. Moments when he spoke his truth, moments when he listened to his heart, moments when he followed a small spark of curiosity or joy, moments when he allowed himself to feel, moments when he showed kindness to himself or others, moments when he trusted his intuition even when it didn't make sense. And as he reflects on these memories, he begins to understand something important. He has always known who he is meant to become. He simply forgot to listen. This understanding grows into a powerful realization, one that rises inside him like sunlight breaking through clouds after a long storm, and the realization is this: the person he wants to become is already inside him, waiting, not demanding, not pushing, not rushing, but simply waiting for him to open the door, and he feels a warm, deep truth settling in his chest as he understands that he doesn't need to create a new self. He needs to return to his true self, the self beneath fear, beneath doubt, beneath old stories, beneath pressure, beneath expectations, and this realization gives him strength because it means he is not starting from zero. He is rediscovering what has always been there. And as he sits with this realization, he feels his heartbeat slowing, his breath deepening, his mind softening, and he senses a quiet transformation beginning inside him, a transformation not of becoming someone new, but of becoming someone true. Daniel stands up slowly and walks to the mirror, something he has done many times during this journey, but today feels different, because today he is not looking to judge himself or compare himself or criticize himself. He is looking to see himself, really see himself, with gentle eyes, and as he looks into the mirror, he sees not only his reflection, but also his journey, the fear he faced, the sadness he allowed himself to feel, the trust he began to build, the stories he rewrote, the hope he allowed to grow, and he feels proud of himself, proud not because he is done, not because he is perfect, but because he is trying, learning, growing, and becoming. And as he continues looking at his reflection, he feels something shift inside him, a soft but powerful shift, like an anchor being lifted from the bottom of the ocean, and he whispers to his reflection, "I am becoming who I was always meant to be." And for the first time in a long time, he truly believes it. He takes a slow breath and steps outside into the fresh air, feeling the sun touch his face, feeling the wind move across his skin, and he begins walking with a new sense of presence, noticing the colors of the world more clearly, noticing the shapes of the trees, the warmth of the sun, the sound of footsteps on the pavement, the gentle rhythm of life around him, and with each step he feels more grounded, more alive, more connected to the world, and more connected to himself. As he walks, he thinks about the life he wants to build, not in a rushed or pressured way, but in a gentle, curious way, asking himself questions like, what kind of person do I want to be with others? What kind of person do I want to be with myself? What kind of life feels true to me? And he realizes that becoming the person he is meant to be is not about making one big decision. It is about making many small decisions that come from truth rather than fear. Daniel pauses at a quiet park and sits on a bench, watching people move around him, parents holding their children's hands, Friends talking and laughing, someone reading a book under a tree, and he thinks about how each of these people is also becoming someone. Each on their own journey, each learning, each growing, each trying to understand themselves a little more, and this thought comforts him, reminding him that he is not alone, that no one is alone, that everyone is a work in progress, a story unfolding, a heart learning to open. He sits there breathing slowly, letting the warm air fill his lungs, and he feels gratitude rise inside him. Gratitude for the journey, gratitude for the lessons, gratitude for the courage to begin. Gratitude for the small but meaningful changes happening inside him every day. And before he leaves the bench, before he returns home, before he continues his journey, he thinks of you, the listener, the learner, and he hopes that as you listen to this story, you feel something awakening inside you too, something soft, something hopeful, something brave. And I, as your guide from Mr. English Lab, want to tell you this gently, clearly, and from the heart. The takeaway from this chapter is simple, but deeply important. Becoming the person you are meant to be is not about changing who you are. It is about returning to who you truly are, beneath fear, beneath doubt, beneath expectations, beneath pressure. And if you give yourself time, patience, honesty, and compassion, you will slowly begin to grow into that person. One small choice at a time, just like Daniel is growing now, quietly, gently, beautifully, becoming more himself with every breath he takes. The next morning begins with a peaceful stillness, the kind of stillness that invites you to pause before the day truly starts. And when Daniel wakes up, he stays in bed for a few quiet moments, feeling the soft weight of the blanket around him and listening to the gentle sound of his own breathing. And in that simple, quiet moment, he feels something important. He feels steady, grounded, calm, as if his heart has found a rhythm that feels natural and true. And this quiet calm becomes the hook that leads him into the day, because he realizes that becoming yourself, trusting yourself, growing into your future, all of it begins not with big decisions or dramatic action, but with small daily steps. The kind of steps that seem simple on the surface but hold enormous power when repeated with intention. And as he sits up slowly, stretching his arms and feeling the peaceful morning light touch his face, he whispers, "Small steps, that's how I grow." And the words feel soft but true, like a gentle reminder from deep inside his heart. Daniel walks to the kitchen, prepares a warm drink, and sits at the same table he has used throughout his journey. And as he holds the warm cup in his hands, he looks around his apartment and realizes how much this simple space has seen his moments of fear, his moments of sadness, his moments of understanding, his moments of quiet transformation. And he feels grateful for the stillness of this morning, because it gives him space to think clearly about what matters next. And this becomes the context for today's reflection, the understanding that true, lasting change does not come from sudden motivation or huge leaps. It comes from the small things you do every day, the tiny choices, the gentle habits, the quiet intentions that shape your life slowly and naturally. He takes a slow sip, feeling the warmth slide through his chest, and he closes his eyes, letting the moment sink into him fully, because he knows he is ready to explore how daily steps shape the life he is becoming. But as soon as he begins thinking about daily steps, he feels a familiar challenge rise inside him, a challenge many people feel, the belief that small steps are not enough, the belief that progress must be big and dramatic, the belief that slow growth is not real growth, and old thoughts appear again. You need to do more. You're not doing enough. You must change faster. And Daniel feels a little wave of pressure roll through his chest, pressure that makes him feel like he should be perfect, like he should have everything figured out already, like he should be making bigger moves, and for a moment he feels overwhelmed, unsure, almost frustrated, and he puts the cup down gently, placing both hands on the table, breathing slowly to calm the noise inside him. After a few moments, he whispers softly, "I don't need to rush," and just like that, the pressure begins to soften, fade, melt into the air around him, because he remembers something important: small steps count. With the pressure now softened, Daniel begins the exploration. He asks himself what small steps actually mean to him, and he realizes that small steps are not about doing everything. They're about choosing one gentle action that moves you forward just a little bit, and another the next day, and another the day after that. He begins to think about his mornings, how simply waking up and breathing slowly has helped him calm his mind. He thinks about how writing in his notebook has helped him understand himself better. He thinks about how stepping outside each day for a short walk has helped him feel lighter and more connected to the world. He thinks about how asking small questions like, "What do I feel?" or "What matters today?" has helped him stay honest, and he realizes that these tiny moments are shaping him far more than any big dramatic change ever could. He begins to smile softly because he understands that small steps are like drops of water, tiny and quiet, but when repeated over time, they shape mountains, and as he feels this gentle truth sink deeper into his heart, something inside him relaxes, opening like a soft flower in the sun. This leads him to a beautiful realization, one that rises inside him like a warm wave moving through his chest. The realization that the small steps he takes each day are teaching him something deeper. They are teaching him patience, teaching him presence, teaching him self-love, teaching him that life is built not through big moments alone, but through thousands of small moments that slowly form the person he is becoming. He realizes that small steps are the reason he now feels calmer, the reason he now listens more carefully to his emotions, the reason he now trusts himself more than before, the reason he now feels hope instead of fear. And he understands that small steps are not just practical, they are spiritual, emotional, transformative. And as he thinks about this, he feels something warm and steady growing inside his chest, like a quiet, confident flame, and he whispers, "Every small step matters, every single one," because he finally believes it. With this realization blooming inside him, transformation begins again, not loud, not dramatic, but slow, warm, natural, like sunlight rising over a quiet hill, and Daniel feels himself changing in subtle ways. He feels more patient with himself, more understanding of his own process, more accepting of his own pace, and he feels something even more powerful, a desire to continue taking small steps every day, not because he feels pressure, but because he feels peace. And as he breathes in deeply, he feels his shoulders relax, his mind quiet, his heart open, and he stands up from the table, feeling lighter and more grounded than he did even a few minutes before, and he walks to the window, watching the world move outside, noticing how everything in nature also grows slowly, quietly, patiently, the trees, the flowers, the sky, the changing seasons, and he feels connected to this natural rhythm, understanding that he too is allowed to grow slowly, quietly, beautifully. Daniel spends a few more minutes standing by the window, reflecting on everything he has learned today, and he smiles softly, a smile filled with gentle confidence, because he knows he no longer needs to pressure himself. He no longer needs to force change. He no longer needs to rush through life trying to be someone he is not. He feels grateful for small steps, for gentle days, for quiet growth, and as he places his hand over his heart, he whispers, "I am becoming myself, one small step at a time," and those words feel like a warm truth spreading through his whole body, grounding him, steadying him, guiding him forward. And before he leaves the window, before he continues into the rest of his day, he thinks of you, the listener, the learner, and he hopes that you can feel this truth in your own heart, because he knows that your journey, just like his, is made of small steps, quiet moments, gentle beginnings, and I, as your guide from Mr. English Lab, want to tell you this slowly and clearly. The takeaway from this chapter is simple but powerful. Small steps can change your life. Small steps can shape your future. Small steps can help you become the person you want to be, and you do not need to be perfect. You do not need to go fast. You simply need to begin gently, honestly, one small action at a time. And if you keep going, even when it feels slow, even when it feels quiet, even when no one else sees your progress, you will grow in ways you cannot yet imagine. Just like Daniel is growing now, step by gentle step, becoming stronger, clearer, and more himself with every new day. The morning rises softly, as if it too is aware that today is different, a morning full of quiet celebration, and Daniel opens his eyes with a sense of calm that feels deeper than anything he has felt before. A calm that comes not from achieving something external, not from being praised or admired, but from a quiet understanding that he has traveled a long, meaningful journey within himself, and that journey has brought him closer to the person he is meant to be. And as he lies there for a moment, listening to the soft hum of life outside his window, he feels a warm sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the mornings he stayed awake feeling lost, for the moments he faced fear and sadness, for the times he doubted himself but continued anyway, for the lessons he learned slowly, gently, day by day, and he realizes that all these moments, even the painful ones, were necessary because they created the foundation for the life he is beginning to live now, and that understanding becomes the hook pulling him forward because he knows that embracing your story is the key to living your truth. He sits up slowly, stretching his arms over his head and feeling the sunlight touch his skin, and he whispers softly, "This is my story, and it is mine," and as he says it, he feels a powerful warmth in his chest, a feeling of ownership, of acceptance, of release, because for so long he had carried the weight of fear, doubt, and expectation, carrying other people's voices as if they were his own, listening to the opinions of the world instead of the whispers of his heart, and today he finally begins to understand that embracing your story does not mean ignoring the past. It does not mean pretending life has been perfect. It means looking at every part of your life, the choices, the mistakes, the joys, the fears, the whole story, and saying to yourself, "This is mine. This made me who I am." Daniel walks to the mirror, the same mirror that has reflected his journey day after day, and as he looks into his own eyes, he sees not just a reflection, but the story of someone who has grown, who has struggled, who has learned, who has chosen courage over fear, honesty over doubt, and patience over rushing, and he feels a deep, quiet pride, a pride not rooted in achievement or success, but rooted in resilience, in persistence, in the daily commitment to himself that he has shown. And as he continues to stare into his own eyes, he realizes that embracing your story also means forgiving yourself, forgiving the choices you regret, the words you wish you had not said, the moments you felt weak. Because forgiveness allows you to release the chains of the past and move forward freely, and he whispers, "I forgive myself. I accept myself. I am enough." With this acceptance comes the challenge, a subtle but powerful one, the challenge of fully stepping into the life that is now possible for him, the life that honors his true self, his heart, his passions, his emotions, and he feels a small tremble in his chest. The tremble of anticipation and fear combined, because living your truth requires courage, it requires vulnerability, It requires showing up even when the world does not understand, even when your own mind questions, even when old habits pull you back towards safety, and for a moment he feels uncertainty rising, but then he takes a deep, slow breath, letting the fear pass through him like a gentle wind, and he reminds himself that the greatest power in life comes not from avoiding fear, but from acting in spite of it, and that realization becomes his anchor. Daniel begins to explore what it truly means to live his truth, and he understands that living your truth is not about impressing others or achieving fame, wealth, or status. It is about aligning your actions, thoughts, and emotions with your deepest values, your deepest desires, your deepest sense of self, and he reflects on the past months of his journey, how he learned to trust himself, how he learned to take small daily steps, how he learned to embrace emotions, how he learned to forgive and accept, how he allowed hope to grow. And he feels a soft excitement rising within him because all these lessons are tools for living his truth fully, tools he now carries with him wherever he goes, tools that will guide him when choices become difficult, when fear returns, when doubt creeps in. This realization grows into a deeper, more powerful insight, one that rises gently like sunlight breaking through clouds, and the insight is this: embracing your story and living your truth is not a single action or a single day, it is a lifelong process, a continuous journey, a constant unfolding, where each day offers the chance to be more honest, more present, more aligned, more compassionate, more courageous, and Daniel feels a wave of relief and joy because he understands now that perfection is not the goal, growth is the goal, presence is the goal, alignment is the goal, and as he breathes slowly, he feels gratitude for every step of the journey, for every challenge faced, for every small choice made, for every day lived with intention. And he smiles softly, a smile full of peace and acceptance, because he knows that he is on the right path. With this insight, transformation deepens inside him, subtle but strong, quiet but powerful, like roots growing deep into the soil, like water slowly carving a river, like light slowly filling a dark room, and he feels a new energy rising, a sense of freedom, a sense of clarity, a sense of connection to himself and the world. And as he walks to the window and looks outside, seeing the world move gently, seeing people living their own lives, he feels a connection to humanity, a compassion for others who are also learning, growing, discovering, and he understands that everyone has a story, everyone has challenges, everyone has growth to undergo, and he feels at peace with the idea that life is a shared journey and that each person's path is unique but equally valuable. Daniel then reflects on the lessons he has learned, and he realizes that there is a pattern, a natural rhythm to personal growth. Moments of struggle lead to insight, moments of reflection lead to understanding, moments of action lead to change, and moments of acceptance lead to freedom. And as he connects these dots, he feels a sense of mastery, not mastery over others, not mastery over life, but mastery over himself, over his mind, over his heart, over his choices. And he smiles softly, feeling light and strong at the same time, because he knows that he is now equipped to face the rest of his life with courage, presence, and honesty, knowing that he can handle challenges, knowing that he can embrace mistakes, knowing that he can continue growing, knowing that he can continue learning. And before he leaves the window, before he steps fully into the rest of his life, he thinks of you, the listener, the learner, and he wants to share one final truth, one final takeaway from his journey, one final gift from Mr. English Lab to you. Life is your story, and you are its author. Every choice, every emotion, every step, every small moment shapes it. Embracing your story means accepting everything you have experienced, learning from it, forgiving yourself, and trusting that your journey is unfolding exactly as it should. Living your truth means aligning your actions and your heart, taking small steps with courage, being honest with yourself and others, and moving forward even when the path is unclear. And if you remember these lessons, if you practice them each day, if you live intentionally and compassionately, you will grow into the person you were always meant to be, exactly as Daniel has grown, and your story will become a life of clarity, purpose, peace, and gentle joy. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one breath at a time, and that is the power of embracing your story and living your truth. Thank you so much for joining today's lesson here at Mr. English Lab. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below telling me what you want to learn next. Your support helps the channel grow and helps me create more lessons for you. Take care, keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next class.